Okay, so this is the final video that we're going to put together to help you with file handling. So what do we want to achieve in this one? Well, in the last video, what we did is we created a basic menu system. And that menu system, we'd already in the first video just searched for a customer by that ID number. We added the menu, but what we hadn't done is updated the customer balance. So written a function here saying update balance, but we just put a simple print statement in saying function not yet written. So what we're now going to do is build that function. So, because it's a function, what I'm going to do here is to save myself messing up any data in this file, any code that I've already written, is I'm going to just create a new file, okay? I'll give it a name. I've already done a practice one there, but I'll call this one test overwrite. I'll overwrite that file. So I've got a test overwrite file. So, how are we going to do this? Well, I think sensibly what would happen is we would search for somebody by their customer number. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So if I create a mini algorithm for myself, so search for customer by their ID number. Then the next thing I want to do, once I've found them, is I'd like to ask the user how much do they want to add to the balance. So ask user for amount to add to balance. And then obviously what we then need to do is overwrite that amount. So we need to add new amount to customer. And that's it. Okay, and that will need to be written to the file. So I could put that in actually. So write new data to file. Okay, so we'll start off with the first bit. And if you remember from last time, we're doing a little bit of repetitive code here. So we could look at making that more efficient later. But for the time being, we're going to stick with this concept here. So I'm just going to copy that because save myself having to type that out again. So I'll just start with that. Now, the next thing we want to do is ask for an ID number. Okay, so we're going to have ID num. And it's an input. So please enter a customer ID number. Now remember, I don't need that to be an integer because we're reading the data as a string, therefore it's a string, so we're matching a string rather than actually a number. So we need to look through the data then, look through every line in the file. So for line in file, what we need to do is we need to split up the data. So if I call this data equals line.split, if you remember we're doing this because at the moment when we read each line, it reads it as one long string, one complete string. What we want to do is split it up. So every time we see a comma, we're splitting up each individual value, and the benefit of that, it means we can actually now access each individual piece of data in each cell. And we need to do that to find the ID number. So then I need to ask the if statement. So ask the question if data at position, so the position 0 being the first cell, so I'm checking whether the ID matches what the user has entered there. So if data at position 0 is equal to, so double equals to what the user wanted it to. Okay. Well, we've done the first one there, so search for the customer by their ID number. So we're assuming that we found that. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is ask the user for the amount to add to the balance. So if the user does exist, what we want to do is say ask that question. So let's have new money. I don't know, new money would be fine. Equals. So I'm going to input again. Enter an amount to add to the balance. Now, this is where we're going to have to think about it, because now what we want to do, now we found that data there, we do need to do a mathematical calculation. So if we ask for this as a string, you can't actually add that number there to a string. So assuming that's a string, if you did, for example, let's just write this down so you can see it. If I put 1057 as a string plus let's say they've added £50 to their account, what that would actually print out or add would be 105750. Because if you're adding two strings together, literally it puts the strings together. So it adds that string to that. Now we don't want to do that. We want it to do a calculation. We want it to come out with an amount rather than two strings added together. So in this instance, I need to make sure that isn't asking for that to be an integer. Okay, so we're saying that needs to be an integer. So we now need to do that calculation. So what we need to do is put new amount equals data at position 0 plus new money. Now, new money is an integer, but data at position 0 isn't, so we need to make that an integer. So all we need to do there is say, well, that is now going to be an integer. Okay, make that an integer. Okay, and then add those two together. Now, this is where maybe it becomes a little bit more complicated. We learnt about different types of file methods. When we open a file, we get options. We can either put it in R mode, which means read. We can put it in append, which is A, which means that you add data to the bottom of the file there, if we appended. So appending won't be able to put things to the side, or we won't be able to pick out individual cells to enter. It would literally put it on the bottom of the file. And we also had W, which was write. Now, if you remember, when we write, it completely wipes the file and overwrites it. So this is where we need to be careful. We've got those options available to us. So what do we do with this new data? How are we going to take, if for example, if we entered in the customer ID 1057, Mr. Brian Branson, and then we decided to add £10 to his account. So his new balance would be 1064. How do we change that if we can't actually access that individual cell? Because append writes, read means we can't actually add data in. Append would go to the bottom, and write just wipes out the file. So what we're going to essentially do here is we're going to build this using an empty list. So we're going to make an empty list for the reason that we're going to take this file in its current state and put it into this empty list, which we're then going to write out later. We're going to overwrite the file with this new data. Now, there are kind of maybe more clever ways in which you can do this. If you import CSV, so Python has a module which you can import called CSV, which gives a little bit more freedom to do a few things that we're trying to achieve here. But it's the concept of the read and the write that I want to teach you here. So what I'll do is I'm going to call this new file, and to make an empty list on an empty array, I'm just going to open and close my square bracket. So at the moment that is empty. Okay, so I'm going to leave this bit for the time being. I'm going to come back to this. I'm just going to say, right, okay, well, what if the user has entered a customer ID number and it's not being found, or it doesn't exist, or if we type in let's say 1546, when it comes across this line here, what I want it to do is take that complete line and put it into that array there, that empty array. So here I'm just going to put else, and I'm going to put not the split data, the whole line. I'm going to put new file dot append the whole line. So I'm going to add, append meaning add, I'm going to add the whole line to that array there. So it's going to look at that line, well that doesn't equal the 1546, and it's going to add it to there. And then the next line, 1057, no, it doesn't match who we want it to, so it's going to put the whole line into there. And then eventually, when we get to this line, so if we type in 1546, what it's going to do is it's going to stop here. So it's going to say, right, okay, well now, enter an amount that you want to add to the balance. Now put that amount in. Now what we've got to do is construct this whole line again. So if I just put new line as a variable, okay, and then we're going to use the trick that we had before. So if I just put in a string, so I'm going to put in the %s for my first variable, which is going to be that. Then I want a comma, so I want that to go in. So again, %s, another comma, I want them and them, so I'll just copy and paste because that's two more. So far, I'm taking that, I want it as it is, so put in that. But this time, instead of putting a comma there, I want that variable there to go in. Okay, so again, it's fine to put another $s. Okay, then, if I close my string and tell it, when I say dollar, I mean %. So then I'm going to put %, and what are these variables? Well, that is data at position 0. That's data at position, this is data at position 1, data at position 2, data at position 3, so I just put those in. Sorry about that. Data at position 2, which is Doogie, data at position 3, which is a surname, and then finally I want the new amount here. New amount. Okay, so now I've reconstructed that line. So this line is now exactly the same with the exception to the new amount, which is that. So I've taken that exactly how it is, and that, and that, and that, but here I'm putting the new balance which we've just constructed. So I need to append that. So I'm just going to put, like we did before, new file dot append, and then I'm going to append the new line, which is all of this here. Okay, so that's all done. So I've asked the user for a new balance, I've added a new amount to the customer, and now I need to write the data to the file. But bear in mind that this file now is in read mode, so I'm just going to put file.close. I need to close that file. Now, I need to then, in theory, what I'd like to achieve here, I've done something wrong here. Sometimes you notice something in Python, when you hit enter and it puts the cursor all the way over to this side, it means that you've probably missed out a bracket somewhere. So we've got to look at that. I've made a mistake on that. I've opened brackets and closed brackets there. It should have just been a closed bracket. Hopefully now that'll fix that. Yeah, so it goes there. In theory, this is what I want to do. I then want to do file equals open, and I want to reopen the atm.csv file, but I want to open it in write mode, so I can overwrite. Now, what that essentially has done, if I was to run this code now, what it would do is it would look at this and it would completely wipe the file, and that'll be it. Now, it's risky doing that at this stage because I haven't tested my code, therefore I don't know if it works. So the best thing to do is maybe create a little test file. So if I just put atm capital letters test.csv, and then once I know this works, I can remove that test and overwrite the original file. Okay, but this is just for test purposes. Okay, now at the moment I have an empty list, new file, empty list. So now that's got all of that data in it, just like the file has. So what I'm going to do in the same concept is I need to loop through, rather than looping through the file, I'm now going to loop through this array, and every line in this list, stroke array, is I'm going to take that line and write it to the file. Okay, so if I put for line, this time not in file, but in new file, which is a list here, what I want to do is I want to file.write the line. Okay, so in theory, that should then loop through every line in this and write it to that test file. So all I need to do now is come outside the loop and close that file. So file.close. Okay, so that would be meeting all of my criteria. So the only thing we've got left to do now is to test what we have done. So as a test, I'm going to try and change 1057, Mr. Brian Bryanson, and I'm going to add £1,000 to his account, so it should end up with 2054. So the first thing I need to do is run this and see if I've come up with any errors, see if I've done anything wrong. Okay, so the ID number I'm going to use is 1057. Right, so already we know that it's found that data, because remember, on the if statement here, if it hadn't found that, it wouldn't have asked me that question. So if data has been found, add a new amount to the balance. So we know that that part has worked. So I said I was going to add £1,000. Okay, and then enter. Okay, and no error message, so that's interesting and good, I think. So let me find this in the file. So you can see now that a file called ATM test has been created. I'm going to run that. Right, okay, so it has worked, but not in other respects. This isn't exactly what we wanted, so let's work out what's gone wrong. So we've got ID, title, name, surname, balance, what we wanted. The next line, 1057, Mr. Brian Bryanson, and you can see, if we look at that cell there, a new balance has been created. We've gone from 1057 to 2057, however, you can see there, that's actually the start of the new new line, which hasn't gone on to a new line. Okay, so if I go to the original file, you can see 4058 there. Oh, it's gone off it. On line 3, sorry. 4058 Miss Steve Stevenson, you can see there should have been something put in there. And that should be either comma or a new line. Let's have a look at the code that I've written. So here, what do we need to add in? Well, we could put a comma, but all that would do is still, we would have Steve Stevenson on the same line. So what we want to do is we need to add in a new line. So /n. Okay, and we'll give that a whirl. So the first thing to do is close this file, try again. So 1057 again, same data. We'll add £1,000. Same thing, no error, which is good. And now, hey presto, we have it on a new line. So we have the title, we have Mr. Brian Bryanson, and it has added £1,000 to the account, and the rest of them remain the same. Okay, so the last thing we have to do now that has worked, is take this data that we've put in here, this bit of code, and we need to put it inside the function of the other one and hope that all still works. So the two things we need to do is get rid of this print statement. So we've got a function called update balance. I'm going to shove all that code in there. You can see it's not all indented, but I can highlight it so it does all indent inside that function. And just hit tab on the keyboard. And there you go, everything is now indented, that should be inside that. Instead of ATM test, because again, we know it works, I can just get rid of that, and it's going to change the original ATM file. So that's my test file, so I'll get rid of that. So you can see this is my ATM CSV file. I'd best close that one down, otherwise it won't work. So let's just run that through a little test. So I have a menu, so search for customer by ID, so number 1, 1057. Say Mr. Brian Bryanson's balance is 1054. Well, let's update his balance. So I'm going to update customer balance. Enter a customer ID number, 1057 again. and updated. Let's add £5,000. Okay, enter. Okay, and as expected, it's now just gone to the menu again. So I want to come out of the system, so I'm going to hit 9, and it's going to exit the system. System is exited. Let's go back to my ATM file. And there you go. The original file, 1057, Brian Bryanson 6075. Okay, and that's the end of that. So like I said beforehand, is that you might be worth researching Python CSV, okay? So if I Google that. Sorry, I'm using Bing, so I have to Google. If I put Python CSV, you can see straight away, this might be something you want to explore, the CSV module, and it might tell you a little bit more on what you can do with CSV files. But this video is really just to teach you about the concept of file reading, appending, and writing.